All right, mic check, mic check, mic check. Right before we go live. Mic check, mic check. Oh, all right. What's up? Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday morning. I hope you had a great weekend. And I was actually doing a couple quick mic checks. I apologize, a couple minutes late this morning, but I was making sure we had a good mic, and you actually might even hear it in just seconds. Here at the home office this morning, had a ton of stuff we're getting caught up on, and a couple of things that I'm really excited to talk about this morning. First and foremost, welcome to the Shred Show with, there we go, my bad. See, I knew there was the mic. Welcome to the Shred Show with myself, Josh Pitts, and I'm excited to do a recap of the AIME Fuse event that Jason and I were down at this last weekend, and I'll be honest, it was a ton of fun. Jason and I go to so many events. We have a lot more events lined up this week. This week we're heading down to Caliber. We're doing an event with them down in Texas, and I'm going to be in Arizona. Jason's going to be in Wisconsin. And then at the end of the month we have the NBA event. But I want to focus on this event because there were some things that came out of this event. First and foremost, if you were down at the event, comment below #AIME Fuse. It was a great event. A huge shout out to Anthony Costa, the entire AIME team. It was such a well put on event. We want to thank them for the opportunity that we had to go down there. We got to do some live interviews down there. We got to get some great content with so many great people, which we're going to get into here in just a second. But honestly, one of the things that I enjoyed most, and as I saw loan officers interacting with one another, was just the camaraderie, the collaboration, people asking one another questions. People were hanging out as we were podcasting and through the halls. One of the things that I noticed is that every turn you always had other people collaborating with one another, and not only with vendors and vendors talking to prospective clients or current clients, but loan officers talking with other loan officers and sharing ideas, sharing different ways to grow their business. And just it was so cool to see that for me. So it really gave me hope, and continues to give me hope for our industry of working together. Sometimes we get this mentality of like, no, it's just me. Like if I share my secrets, somebody else is going to go out and do it. But I just don't think that's the case. And for me personally, it was so great to see that. And I want to thank Laura Brandeo from AFR. I had an incredible opportunity to speak to a bunch of women during the Affinity Women's event, during the event, and it was so great. Had so many people come up after, and it's something that I love. Well, I've talked about passion. I talked about a few different things, and passion in particular. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is speaking, and I love speaking. It's something that I enjoy doing. I have fun with it. And at the event, I just had a ton of fun being able to do that. And then that was on Friday. Then on Saturday, Friday was packed with an incredible lineup of different panels and speakers. Guys, it was a packed house. Like there was Barry Habib, and there was a couple presentations where literally it was standing room only. And Friday was like the pre-day, and it was actually really cool. And it was just so much fun to see all the support and see everybody there. And then going into Saturday, we knew it was going to be a big day, and it was. Like it absolutely, the huge ballroom that everybody was in. I mean, it was a packed house all morning long. Matt Ishbia did an incredible job. Laura Brandeo did a very cool presentation to start off the day. Then went into Matt Ishbia, and then went into Gary Vaynerchuk. And I want to talk about Gary for just a second because, and I'm going to be straight up honest, I've kind of almost been disenchanted with Gary going into the event. And I know that sounds a little bit like, what? Why? I've listened to Gary. I've been following Gary for years. I mean, you can actually see his books. I have all of his books. I love everything that he's taught over the years, but I kind of felt like I had heard it all, and I'd heard not, and you're probably like, what are you talking about? He puts out so much content. I had, but if you listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, you actually know that a lot of his content is the same thing over and over and over, which is good because sometimes we just need to be reminded of it. But I was absolutely, I don't want to say starstruck, but I actually had the opportunity to go backstage and sit with Gary just for a couple minutes, just him and I, and actually got some great footage I'll be sharing with you guys, where I was just talking to him kind of off camera, and then of course we filmed some of it, but it absolutely just reinvigorated, just got me so excited for Gary Vaynerchuk and what he's done. And I watched a bunch more of his content over the weekend. But what he said while we were down there was a couple things that really highlighted for me. The first one in particular was he talked about putting out content, and that you cannot put out enough content. You should be putting out 50 pieces of content a day. And the other thing that really resonated with me and why I started Shred Media is he actually talked about becoming a media company. And when I started Shred Media at the beginning of this year, that's exactly what I had in mind. I had heard him talk about that before. And it's funny because the things I've been talking about, Jason and I have been talking about over the last few months, it's the same thing. Like, it's literally the exact same thing that Gary talked about on stage. And I was just like, this is awesome. And what was really cool for me is after Gary spoke, we had a lot of people come up to us and like, hey, you guys have been talking about this. Like, the stuff you're talking about, Gary just talked about. And Gary is much bigger than us. Like, we've learned a lot of things from him. He's a mentor to us. And it was cool because all these people are coming up and like, hey, you and Jason have been talking about that on the show. Like, and it just reinforced what we've been talking about. When it comes from an authority figure who is, has a much bigger presence, who has a much bigger brand, and they talk about the same things that we've been talking about, it's like, absolutely, guys, this is building a brand, putting yourself out there, creating content. This is the future. And he talked about some of these companies that are doing it. He literally took his shoe off during the presentation and pointed out the Nike swoosh. The swoosh sign of Nike is a symbol, but everybody knows the brand. And Nike has done an incredible job building that brand. Now, a lot of people, and I talked about this before, is building a brand and branding are very, very different. Having a logo, that's great, but Nike has just done such a great job building that brand over the years, and you can too. You have to start somewhere. You have to start putting out content. And what Gary was talking about, and there were some great question and answers. There's a lot of people who asked questions, but here's the crazy thing: is all these questions that were being asked of him, if any of these people had just watched any of Gary's content over the last 6 months, all the people that had asked questions, except for Kevin Perennial. Kevin, I'm going to give you a little shout out here. Kevin had one of the only questions that was actually like, hey, Gary, like, go into more tactical. And Gary doesn't get really tactical. Like, if you ever hear Gary talk about getting tactical, he's like, go Google it, go YouTube it. Like, you can find that. Gary talks high level. Gary really talks strategy and kind of big picture type stuff. But Kevin Perennial tried to get him to go deeper with it, but he didn't. But everybody that asked him these questions, again, they were all questions that if you've watched or if you've been listening to his content, you absolutely would have heard it before. So it's kind of crazy to me. And again, we keep talking about it. And the other thing that really stood out for me is Gary just kept, and he talks about this a lot, is, go do it. Like, stop. And he said that there was probably 1,500 people in this room. He says, what's really hard for me is, like, out of the 1,500 people in the room, maybe 8 or 9 of you are actually going to do it. And a few people came up to us after that and like, hey, do you think that's true? And I said, absolutely. It's 100% true. We talk to audiences all the time. We go around speaking at different events all across the country. And it's only 1 or 2 people from all these events that actually come up to us and actually they start doing it. They'll come ask us questions. But, it's only a few people who actually end up implementing it in their business. So if you're listening to this morning, again, and real quick, the rest of the event was incredible. After Gary Vaynerchuk, we had Anthony Costa got up and talked about AIME, and he had some really great points. And then we had Ryan Serhant from $1 Million Listing or Selling New York, whatever his show's called, and he did a phenomenal job. And then we had Phil Shoemaker. There was just an awesome lineup of speakers at the event. But what I want to talk about this morning, I know I've gone over my 5 minutes. I try to keep this under 5 minutes, but there was just so many things that came out of this for me and just reinforced it for me. Even though, like, we're trying the best we can to do these things that Gary was talking about, for me, it was just, hey, you have to be able to not only have a strategy, but just go implement it. Just go start doing it. And so many people came up after and they're like, hey, Josh, you did what Gary was talking about. And that's when I started the LO life, and then I started Shred Media. I just did it. I just implemented it. And I say this not to pat myself on the back, but in the last year, it's taken me to build my brand. It's happened. And now I have people, as we go to these events, people come up and say, hey, that's awesome. You actually did it. So I'm just challenging you guys to do it. Stop overthinking it. Don't be like, oh, it's just one more thing to add to my plate. Yeah, it is, but it's worth it. These big companies, these Zillows, these Quickens, this competition we have in the industry, they're doing it. And if we don't, I want to see everybody win. That was one of my biggest takeaways too. Is I literally, as I was standing there in Gary's interview, or as he was talking, I looked around the room and it almost broke my heart. Like, truly, I'm like, what's so sad to me is, in the next couple of years, so many of these people aren't going to be in the business anymore. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it's true. Like, I'm not trying to be doomsday or doom and gloom, but honestly, if you're not starting to build a personal brand, if you're not starting to build this in the right way, you will eventually be faded out. And again, I hate saying that, but it's going to have, like, you look at other industries and what's happening in those, and that's what's happening. And I want to see all of you, for those who tune into the show, those who listen to me, I want to see you succeed. More than anything, I want to see you achieve greatness. You're doing great things now. Why not take a little bit extra? Why not dedicate yourself? It doesn't have to be a ton. So many people overthink that they need to put out tons and tons of content. You just don't have to. You just have to start with a small amount and start building, 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 building. And yes, guys, I do talk about the same thing a lot, but it's because we're still not seeing it. Until we start seeing, a good percentage of the industry actually start to do these things, become a media company. Start documenting what you're doing. Share it with the world. People really do care. You're thinking right now in your mind, well, Josh, people don't want to watch what I do. People don't care. They do. It may not be everybody. Even people today. I have friends still joke about, like, Josh, some of the stuff you say to me is completely irrelevant. I don't care. Because maybe that message doesn't resonate with you, but there's somebody else that's across the country or somebody else in my local market that does resonate with. So don't worry. Just start putting out content. Start creating. Start documenting. Don't worry about creating. I promise you, you will have an impact. You will have an influence on people around you, but you have to start somewhere. And start today. Today's October 15th. It's Columbus Day, I believe. So start today. Make the challenge. Write it down. No, don't just write down a goal. I talked about getting tactical last week. But say, I'm going to commit on this Wednesday at 1 p.m. I'm going to talk about FHA or conventional loans, or I'm going to talk about selling homes, or I'm going to talk about my first video is just going to talk about me and why I'm excited to get into this. So with that, guys, sorry I went way over my 5 minutes. I usually try to keep around 5 to 7 minutes, but there's so many thoughts going through my head this morning, and I really want to see all of you succeed. I really want in 2, 3, 4 years, as our industries continue to change, that you're here. And I'm watching you do this exact same thing, sharing your passion, sharing what really gets you motivated, what energizes you every single morning. So with that, guys, hopefully you take something out of this. It was a great, again, huge shout out to AIME and the entire team of AIME, because it literally did take an awesome team of collaboration to put it together. So with that, guys, thanks to AIME, thanks to all of you for joining me this morning and joining me every single morning. I had so many people come up at these events and say, hey, Josh, I watch your stuff. I thank you so much for your content. So it really warms my heart. If you see me at an event, please come up and just say hi. I love to meet you in person. I see so many people that jump on and off, but I really appreciate it. And I wouldn't, if it weren't for you guys, I'd probably still be doing it, but I really do appreciate all that you guys do tuning in and watching the show and listening to our content. So with that, guys, I appreciate you. I love you. Make sure you show up, you hustle, you repeat every day. See ya.